Liam Bennett thought he had found the love of his life in Haley Mercer, a vibrant, artistic woman battling a cruel disease. But behind Haley's tearful confessions and trembling hands was a web of lies so convincing, it drained Liam emotionally, financially, and psychologically. What began as a story of devotion quickly spiraled into a chilling case of manipulation, deception, and emotional blackmail, and by the time Liam uncovered the truth, he was already trapped in a relationship built entirely on fiction. Liam Bennett had always been careful about who he let into his life. She left her art supplies scattered around his apartment and covered his refrigerator with Polaroids. At first, she told him she was tired. Then she explained that she was having a flare-up. She said MS came in waves, sometimes she was fine, other times it was unbearable. Her legs would tingle, her fingers would cramp, and her vision would blur. Liam offered to take her to a doctor, but she said she didn't want to go. She hated hospitals, hated the way doctors looked at her like she was lying. Liam didn't push. He trusted her. She painted a mural in his hallway without asking, and instead of getting upset, Liam found himself smiling at her boldness. He hadn't realized how lonely he'd been until she filled the empty corners of his life with her chaotic energy. Growing up in a quiet Indiana neighborhood, he learned early to value stability. She wasn't like the women he usually dated. She was spontaneous, artistic, and full of emotion. She laid out pillboxes on his kitchen counter and said it was time for her injections. Liam watched as she went into the bathroom and came out 10 minutes later looking exhausted. She said the shots made her dizzy. He believed her. They met at a friend's housewarming party on a chilly November evening. Liam had only gone because his coworker begged him. He was about to leave when Haley walked in wearing a red scarf and mismatched earrings. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help@openai.com. She laughed loudly, the kind of laugh that turned heads, and within minutes, she was talking to Liam about her love for abstract painting, her childhood cat, and the book she was reading about trauma and healing. His days followed a familiar rhythm: wake up at 6, run 3 miles, work at the architecture firm until 5. She was intense. There was no small talk, just long stories and sudden bursts of vulnerability. She told him about her struggles with depression, about losing her mother young, and then almost casually mentioned that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a few years back. Liam listened, wide-eyed. He didn't know much about MS, but he felt a sudden, powerful sense of protectiveness. Here was someone raw and unfiltered, someone who had survived more than he could imagine, and returned to his one-bedroom apartment to cook a quiet dinner alone. He liked it that way. Predictable, quiet, safe. Friends joked that he was an old soul trapped in a 32-year-old's body. He didn't mind. He liked order. Chaos made him nervous. That's why no one was more surprised than Liam when he fell hard and fast for Haley Mercer. They spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor near the fireplace, talking. Within a month they were inseparable. Haley would come over with bags of groceries and make strange vegan dinners in his kitchen. Then came the nights when she couldn't get out of bed. Soon she started showing him bottles of medication. Names he couldn't pronounce, labels with strange dosages. Then she mentioned her insurance wouldn't cover the newest medication. It was experimental. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. Liam hadn't expected his life to shift so completely. Before Haley, he had lived in a world of straight lines and quiet colors. After Haley moved in, the days became louder, less predictable, more chaotic. She filled the space with her energy. Sometimes it was creative and warm, other times erratic and heavy. At first, he thought it was just her artistic temperament. She painted at all hours of the night, rearranged furniture without warning, and burned incense that made his apartment smell like a spice market. Still, he liked it. He liked her. But as time passed, her illness started to dominate everything. Haley would wake up some mornings and say she couldn't feel her legs. Other times, she'd complain of burning sensations or blurred vision. Liam didn't know what to do. He'd carry her to the couch, wrap her in blankets, and sit beside her for hours. She said flare-ups could come and go unpredictably. Some days, she seemed perfectly fine laughing, cooking, painting. Other days, she didn't get out of bed. When he suggested going to the hospital, she shook her head violently and said the doctors didn't understand her condition. She claimed they had misdiagnosed her before and treated her like she was making it up. The distrust in her voice made him stop asking. The topic of money came up quietly at first. Haley mentioned that her medication wasn't fully covered by insurance. She showed him some bottles' names Liam didn't recognize. She said they were part of an experimental treatment program and weren't available through traditional pharmacies. She'd found a supplier through a patient support group, she claimed, someone who imported them from overseas. It sounded shady, but she looked so tired when she said it, so fragile that he didn't press her. The first time she asked for help, it was just $200. She said she'd pay him back once her disability claim came through. It seemed harmless enough. He wired the money that day. It didn't stop there. Every couple of weeks, there was a new issue. Her shipment had been delayed and the supplier needed an expedited payment. The customs fees had doubled. The treatment protocol had changed. Liam didn't question it. He saw how pale she looked. He watched her hands tremble as she tried to paint. He told himself that love meant helping, no matter what. Haley became more dependent on him as the weeks passed. She stopped going to her part-time job at the bookstore. She said it was too physically demanding. He believed her. She seemed thinner, more exhausted. She rarely left the apartment. She cried often. She told Liam he was the only one she trusted, the only one who hadn't left her. At night she clung to him like a child, whispering fears about dying young, about losing her ability to walk, about being forgotten. The emotional weight began to crush him. Still, he didn't stop. He became her caretaker, her protector, her source of strength. He told himself he had to stay strong for both of them. But it wasn't just the money. There were darker shifts. The first time Liam mentioned how much debt he was taking on, Haley's expression changed. She didn't thank him or apologize. Instead, she got angry. She accused him of caring more about money than her life. She said if she couldn't afford her medication, there was no point in living. That night, she took a bottle of pills and locked herself in the bathroom. Liam pounded on the door, terrified. Eventually, she let him in, and he found her sitting on the floor, crying, the bottle still sealed. She said she didn't want to die, but she needed him to understand what this was doing to her. After that, he didn't question her anymore. The threats became more frequent. If he pushed back on expenses or mentioned his financial stress, she would spiral. She'd say things like, "I should just disappear," or "I'd be better off dead anyway." Once, she left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Thank you for everything. I'm sorry." Liam found it after coming home from work. He called the police in a panic. They found her sitting alone in a nearby park. When he arrived, she acted confused, like she had no idea why he was so upset. Despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to leave. He believed that her condition made her unpredictable, that her outbursts were symptoms, not manipulation. He told himself this was love, that love meant sacrifice, and so he kept paying. The credit card bills stacked up. He borrowed from his 401. He took out a personal loan from the bank, telling them it was for emergency home repairs. Every night he fell asleep to the same haunting thought. What if she really dies because I didn't help? And every morning he woke up and tried again. The first time Liam began to question Haley's story, it wasn't because of something dramatic. It was something small, an expiration date. He had gone to take out the trash and noticed an empty pill bottle in the bathroom trash bin. The label looked off. It didn't list a pharmacy. Instead, it had a generic sticker with the medication's name handwritten in faded ink. The expiration date had passed over a year ago. He paused for a moment, confused. She was a registered nurse, sharp and practical, and had always been suspicious of Haley. From the start, she thought the relationship had moved too fast. During dinner, Emma asked casual but pointed questions. What kind of M's did Haley have? She said the waiting rooms gave her anxiety, that she didn't want him to see her hooked up to IVs, that it was her burden, not his. What was the name of the specialist treating her? What were the medications she was taking? But Haley was different. Colder, more irritable. She accused him of letting his sister come between them. She said Emma had no idea what it was like to live with chronic illness, that she was trying to destroy their relationship. Liam tried to reassure her, but the tension remained. That night, Haley claimed she had a seizure in the shower. Liam found her curled on the bathroom floor, crying and shaking. One evening, while Haley was sleeping, Liam searched through the drawer where she kept her medications. He opened the bottles. Inside, many of them were over-the-counter vitamins or basic painkillers, none of the expensive names she'd told him. He checked their shared bank account, scrolling through transaction history. Many of the payments he had made, supposedly to online pharmacies or support groups, had gone to accounts with vague names. One listed only as HM Wellness Fund. Another as Private Med Logistics. None had websites. All were linked to anonymous payment platforms. He took pictures of the labels, then sat at his computer and searched for every drug. He wanted to call 911, but she begged him not to. She said the hospital would misdiagnose her again. She swore she was fine, that she just needed rest. But then told himself it must be a backup supply. Maybe she'd used it in desperation. The fear in her eyes, the weakness in her voice. But something about the way she stopped crying the second she saw his face made him pause. He didn't say anything. Just helped her up and carried her to bed. He threw it out and didn't mention it. Haley would be affectionate one minute, accusing him of betrayal the next. She brought up money more often, new treatments, emergency supplements, alternative therapies she wanted to try. Liam was behind on rent. He hadn't told anyone, but he'd been dipping into his credit card just to buy groceries. He told Haley he needed to slow down. She went silent. That night she left the apartment without warning. Hours passed. He called her over and over, no answer. Just before sunrise she came back in, hair damp, jacket covered in dirt. She said she'd been walking for hours, that she thought about stepping in front of a train. She looked him in the eyes and said she only came back for him. But once the thought was there, it started to spread. Haley's routines didn't always make sense. Sometimes she'd cancel plans, saying she couldn't walk or even move because of the pain. But later that same night, she'd be up painting for hours, full of energy. Other times, she said her vision was too blurry to read or watch TV, but Liam would see her scrolling on her phone, texting rapidly. He began to notice inconsistencies. A week after she said she had run out of medication, he found a box tucked under the sink with a dozen unopened bottles. When he asked about it, she snapped. She said those were old prescriptions and accused him of snooping. He apologized, but the feeling didn't go away. Liam's younger sister, Emma, came to visit in early spring. Haley grew tense. She gave vague answers. Said her doctor was underground, someone she found through a patient support group. When Emma pushed a little more, Haley stood up, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door without a word. Later that night, Emma sat down with Liam. Her tone was gentle, but serious. She told him she'd never seen anyone treat MS the way Haley described. The symptoms were too inconsistent. The medications she named didn't match any current treatment protocols. Emma wasn't accusing her directly, but she was worried. She asked Liam one question. Had he ever seen actual medical records? Liam hadn't. Every time he'd offered to go with Haley to her appointments, she'd refused. Still, Liam trusted her. He loved her. But the seed of doubt was growing. The next day, Emma left, and Liam tried to go back to normal. It felt real. In the following days, the emotional swings got worse. The guilt was crushing. He gave her the money the next morning, but his mind kept circling back to Emma's visit. Some of them didn't exist. Others were not used for MS at all. His stomach dropped. Liam didn't know what to do. The woman he loved, the woman he had poured his time, money, and heart into, had she been lying from the beginning? He felt like he was living inside a nightmare. But something told him that what he had uncovered was just the surface, and what lay beneath could be far darker. Liam couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the fan and the even rhythm of Haley's breathing beside him. He knew it was wrong, but his instincts told him something was being hidden. What he found only confirmed his fears. The inbox was full of messages from online support groups, not for MS patients, but forums discussing ways to solicit sympathy and financial support from partners. Each message followed a similar formula. I'm really scared right now. The meds are too expensive. I don't know what to do. I don't want to die. He didn't know what his next step would be, but he knew this wasn't just a lie between partners. He met the man at a diner 2 towns over. The Pi, a quiet, methodical man named Curtis, agreed to look into Haley's background. He promised discretion. In the meantime, Liam acted normal. He continued to wake up beside Haley, cook her breakfast, and pretend to believe every story she told. The performance exhausted him, but he knew confrontation could lead nowhere. Haley had threatened to harm herself before, and if cornered, she might actually follow through. This was something bigger. It felt like fraud. It felt like abuse, and it felt dangerously close to something criminal. In one draft, she had forgotten to change the name. She had written Jason instead of Liam. Haley was unusually affectionate, almost too sweet, as if she sensed something was shifting. They matched IP addresses, cross-referenced usernames, and found dozens of similar messages sent to men across the country. Some of the victims had sent money. Others had simply disappeared from her life when she became too intense. She looked panicked. She said she needed to leave town for a few days to visit a friend. She was vague, avoiding eye contact. Liam knew what it meant. She was about to run. He texted the detective immediately. They moved fast, but it was enough to show a pattern, one that crossed state lines. She kept talking about the future, wanting to get a puppy, travel together, maybe even get engaged. Liam nodded and smiled, but inside he was numb. He had loved a ghost, someone who never truly existed. Someone who wore illness like a costume and used suffering as a weapon. Every word she said felt like a script. He couldn't believe how blind he had been for so long. She had a fake ID, 2 prepaid phones, and $1,200 in cash. She said it started as a small exaggeration, a way to get attention. But when people responded with sympathy, she leaned in. Over time, the lie grew into a way of life. She claimed she didn't know how to stop, that she was scared of being alone, that pretending to be sick gave her purpose, control. At first she claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Liam was jealous, that he had made up the accusations because she had decided to leave him, but the evidence was overwhelming. The messages, the aliases, the banking records, it all painted a picture of calculated deception. Her birth name was Heather Maxwell, and she had legally changed it 6 years earlier. All were connected to burner phones and prepaid cards. All had been drained within days of receiving deposits. She had lived in at least 3 other states over the past decade, never longer than a year at each address. In 2 different towns, she had been reported for suspicious behavior involving romantic partners. One report involved financial exploitation. The other concerned a suicide threat that later proved to be staged. No charges had ever stuck, but a pattern had emerged. Each time she'd claimed to be suffering from a serious illness, always vague, always undocumented. The relationships followed the same arc-intense emotional bonding, financial dependency, dramatic threats, and eventual disappearance. Liam was asked to testify. He did so, holding back tears, recounting the years he spent trying to save someone who never needed saving. There were at least 5 different names saved in her contacts under vague titles like Friend A and Support East. There were threads titled things like How to Explain Invisible Illnesses to Skeptical Boyfriends and Tips for Faking Symptoms. He sat in a small office at the station, hands shaking, and explained everything, how it started, what he discovered, what he suspected. The police believed she was dangerous, not necessarily violent, but unstable and manipulative. They suspected that if confronted, she might either flee or escalate. He handed over the flash drive and the PI's report. The officer he spoke to listened carefully and took detailed notes. It was enough to open an investigation, but not enough for an arrest. Not yet. One particular message stood out. It included a step-by-step guide to mimicking neurological flare-ups, including lists of symptoms and what to say if someone called 911. The doubt had fully taken root now. He couldn't stop thinking about the fake pill bottles, the expired labels, the phantom payments. He wanted to believe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she was misled by someone else. Maybe the money had truly gone toward some unconventional treatment. But every logical thread he pulled unraveled a little more of the story she'd built. The next morning, while Haley was in the shower, Liam checked her email. Liam felt sick. He kept digging. Hidden in her drafts folder were copied and pasted messages, clearly meant to be sent to different people. He was no longer just a boyfriend, he had become a mark. Liam backed up everything he could: screenshots, emails, payment records, and saved it to a flash drive. He contacted a private investigator, someone recommended by Emma's husband. 2 weeks later, Curtis called. The report was stunning. Haley Mercer was not her real name. Curtis also traced several of the payment accounts Liam had sent money to. Armed with this information, Liam went to the police. Liam was advised to remain calm, to continue gathering information if possible, and most importantly, not to alert Haley. Liam returned home and tried to act normal. It was the hardest week of his life. The breakthrough came when police, with help from digital forensics, traced one of the accounts Haley had used to receive money. A federal case was forming. One evening, Liam came home to find Haley packing a bag. Haley was arrested that night, just a few blocks from the train station. During questioning, Haley eventually admitted to lying about the illness. The prosecutors saw it differently. They charged her with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and coercive abuse. When he left the courthouse, he didn't feel relief, just a deep, aching emptiness. All he had now was the truth, and the wreckage she left behind. The courtroom was silent when the prosecuting attorney laid out the evidence. A mountain of digital trails, fake identities, stolen money, and shattered trust formed the case against Haley Heather Maxwell. Prosecutors described the careful construction of her lies, from doctored medical forms to staged flare-ups designed to trigger sympathy. They spoke of the dozens of men she targeted, of the life savings siphoned away, and of the lives left in chaos. Flashing cameras and shouted questions measured the scale of Heather's deception. Every corner held a fragment of their time together: the mural in the hallway, the donated canvases, the empty pill bottles he had once believed contained life-saving drugs. He spent days dismantling the physical reminders. He painted over the mural, boxed up the art supplies, and cleared out every photo. The process was painful but necessary. She enrolled in group therapy programs and wrote letters to her court-appointed counselor, expressing remorse in measured tones. Her restitution payments were minimal at first, just a fraction of what she owed, but she promised to contribute as she could, even from prison wages. He took early morning runs on familiar trails, signed up for watercolor classes, and began saving for a modest vacation, something simple like a cabin by a lake. He reconnected with old friends whom he had neglected, feeling a renewed appreciation for relationships built on trust rather than calamity. He felt no anger, no elation, only a quiet resolve. The chapter of his life defined by deception was closing, and a new one was beginning. He wished her no harm, only the chance to rebuild honestly if she could. And he wished himself peace. He even volunteered at a local crisis hotline, using his story to encourage others to seek help when confronted with emotional blackmail. To some victims, the small checks felt like mockery. To others, it was a strange form of closure. Those moments came unbidden, but they grew less frequent over time. Liam learned that healing was not a linear path. There were days of unexpected sorrow, but also days of quiet gratitude for his survival. With each item he removed, he reclaimed a piece of himself. The news stirred old feelings in Liam: uncertainty, resentment, a flicker of pity. He recognized that for Heather, the prison walls might have offered the structure she craved, just as her lies had once given her purpose. The man who once measured life in straight lines and predictable patterns had learned to embrace uncertainty, to forgive himself, and to find strength in vulnerability. His heart, once broken by a masterful illusion, had survived, and in surviving, had become something stronger than he ever imagined. But he also knew justice could never fully repair the damage she caused. She declined to speak, leaving Liam to navigate the aftermath alone. Liam accepted, recognizing that rebuilding his financial stability would take years. He also entered therapy, seeking to untangle the guilt and self-blame that lingered. Men from New York, Texas, California, each with a similar story: the sudden emergence of a perfect girlfriend, the heartbreaking diagnosis, the relentless pleas for money. Some lost marriages, others nearly lost their sanity. A nationwide support group formed online, offering practical advice on spotting fake illnesses and emotional manipulation. Liam spoke at several virtual sessions, sharing his experience in hopes of preventing others from falling into the same trap. His therapist helped him understand the nature of coercive manipulation and how it could affect even the most cautious person. Liam learned that self-forgiveness would be as important as accountability. He gave a brief statement, a warning to others, an acknowledgement of his own pain, and a request for privacy. Reporters pressed him for details, but he shook his head and walked away. There was nothing more he wanted to say. The story had been told, now he needed to rebuild. Liam listened, face pale, as his own name came up again and again. Each mention felt like reopening a wound he had only just begun to tend. During the trial, psychological experts testified on both sides. The defense argued Heather suffered from severe personality disorders and urged to manipulate, to control through feigned vulnerability. They claimed her actions were the product of untreated mental illness, not malice. The prosecution painted a different picture, years of premeditation and greed hiding behind the mask of illness. The jury weighed every detail, every timeline, every bank transfer. Liam watched, unspeaking, as the woman he had loved was portrayed as both victim and villain. When the verdict finally came, it was guilty on all major counts. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber as he pronounced the sentence: 8 years in a federal prison, restitution payments to victims, and mandatory psychiatric treatment. The decision felt both too harsh and too lenient. Heather's face remained stoic, almost unreadable. Liam realized then that he had never truly known her. The woman who professed fear of dying alone had built her life on lies so intricate they fooled even him. Outside the courthouse, the media swarm was overwhelming. Returning to his apartment felt like stepping into a mausoleum of memories. He reached out to Emma more often. She provided practical help, guidance on debt consolidation, advice on counseling services, even a job lead at her hospital's administrative office. Meanwhile, Heather began her own journey behind bars. The psychiatric evaluations she received revealed deep-seated trauma and a need for external control. In the months that followed, more victims came forward. Slowly, life regained a semblance of normalcy. Liam found comfort in routine again. Every now and then, memories surfaced, an unexpected image of Heather's bright red scarf, the echo of her laughter, the painful realization that none of it had been real. 2 years after the trial, a judge ordered Heather transferred to a halfway house for good behavior and progress in therapy. On the day Heather walked out of the halfway house, Liam stood in a park far from any camera. In the end, the greatest twist was not in Heather's confessions or the trial's outcome, but in Liam's own metamorphosis.